Welcome to the Feminist Wellbeing Podcast, my sisters. I'm so happy that you're here. And I'm your host, in case you don't know me, Stephanie Dozier, non-diet nutritionist, certified non-diet coach and cognitive behavior coach. And I have a PhD in diet culture. Why do I say that? I spent 25 years dieting. And in my 40s, I said, no more. And I learned a bunch of stuff that I'm here to share with you today. And I want to guide you to feel damn good by fighting diet culture and patriarchy so you can create power in your life. And today I'm going to share a way you can do that by rethinking about self-sabotage. I have some very strong opinion about this. And I wrote this while I was preparing for a class that I'm teaching this week. As this podcast is being released, I am teaching a self-coaching mentorship where I'm teaching women how to coach themselves. This is part of my mission of making coaching more accessible. I mean, you can pay me to coach you one-on-one, or you can pay one of my certified coach. And that is great if you are in a financial state to be able to do that. But what if you don't? Self-coaching, learning how to coach yourself, is the medicine at that place. And that's what this mentorship was about. We spent a month, we are still spending a month together, learning how to use a cognitive behavioral coaching model, but from me to me. How can I coach myself? And the module, the lesson this week is about changing our action or moving from inaction to action in the context of our goal, in the context of what we're pursuing. So, what is self-sabotage? What is my perspective on it, and how do I coach it? Self-sabotage, I agree with the definition of it, which is when people do or don't do things that prevents them from being successful or accomplishing their goal. And that's the key here. It's what people do and don't do. Because here's the first thing I'm going to be teaching my group this week. Inaction, like avoidance, procrastination, numbing, Netflixing. This is something I came up with, Netflixing. I've been using that in my coaching for a few years now, and it makes my client giggle. So it's an action. It's when you're supposed to be doing something, but instead you're laying on the couch rewatching the same series you've watched already 2-3 times. I call that Netflixing. So it's action and inaction that you said you were going to do, that you know you have to do in order to achieve your goal. But for whatever reason, and we'll get into the whatever, there's an actual reason. It has nothing to do with your smartness. It has nothing to do with your worth. It has to do with other things, which we're going to uncover you're not doing. So we've already talked about procrastination, avoidance, but also one of the favorite one of us as women who have lived in diet culture is perfectionism, right? So we've been through the years and years of wellness diet or restriction diet to lose weight. And we were always promised that if we did it perfectly, right, we would be successful. The problem was us not doing it perfectly. So we became perfectionists. And in the prior podcast I did a couple weeks ago, many of us that live in fat bodies or think of ourselves as not good enough, we've adopted perfectionism as a coping mechanism to feel safe. So perfectionism is another way of self-sabotaging or black and white thinking, right? Extreme behavior, thinking we have to do like all the way over to this side. Think about how many times you wanted to move your body or exercise or go to the gym, and you haven't been going to the gym for months, and all of a sudden you sign yourself up to go to the gym 5 days a week. Black and white thinking, right? You think that the solution to zero going to the gym is like holding yourself accountable to 5 days of a gym. Does that feel familiar? All self-sabotage. Why does self-sabotage happen? Now, this is where my perspective diverge greatly from perspective, I'll call it, from the internet, okay? Self-sabotage is often labeled as weakness, a sign that you aren't accountable enough, that you aren't disciplined enough, that you don't have enough willpower, right? And we've all learned that. But the truth is, when you actually start studying psychology, coaching, like the reason why humans behave the way they do according to science, not according to oppressive system like patriarchy and diet culture, you actually look into the data and the science as to why people self-sabotage, is because people don't feel safe. They don't feel safe emotionally, they don't feel safe mentally, and they don't feel safe physically. And it could be conscious or unconscious. So let me give you some example of this. Unconscious reason why you self-sabotage could be because of family upbringing, something that happened to you 25 years ago, like bullying. Great example of that. The trauma of dieting, right? I often refer to my example of being walked into Weight Watcher at 12 years old and being publicly weighed in front of everyone at 12 years old. Trauma, right? Belief system, value system taught to you by your family. And conscious one could also be dieting, right? One of the reasons why diets don't work is that we have this great innate safety system within us that overrides everything else. When we don't feel safe physically, there is this mechanism in our nervous system called the fight or flight, right? It's a way, completely unconscious, when your mind and your body don't feel safe, it engages what is commonly known as fight or flight, which means run for your life. So how does that play out in dieting? When we don't eat enough, when we cancel out, numb, avoid our feeling of hunger, we tolerate hunger instead of eating when we're hungry, the body's like, oh my God, something's happening. Like there's all this food in front of us and we don't eat it. Danger, danger, danger. We're starving. We're dying. We're starving. We're dying. And then we suppress. And all of a sudden, poof, it's stronger than anyone. You're going to eat. You're going to binge. Because you feel unsafe. Because you're not supposed to be hungry when there's food in front of you. And that's where we are as a society. Like food access to most people is not a problem. We're voluntarily starving ourselves. So self-sabotage is going to happen. That's why diets don't work. Because diet tried to override an innate safety system that's in every human being. It'll never work. Anyway, I could go on rants for minutes and minutes, but that's not the topic of conversation. We're talking about self-sabotage. So here's another example. I've talked a lot about unconscious, but here's another example of conscious. And this is going to be coming from me as I was writing my note for this class. I remember being part of a CrossFit gym, 8 years ago, and not wanting to go because I knew damn well what was going to happen when I went. I would get yelled at, because at the time, I don't know today, but at the time, that was the premise of CrossFit, yelling at people to get them to do extraordinary thing, quote unquote, with my finger in the air now. And I was going to be judged. Nobody would want to partner with me because I was fat. I knew that was in my mind when I decided not to go, when I quote unquote self-sabotage to create safety, to avoid judgment, rejection, and being yelled at, conscious. So the oppressive approach to self-sabotage is more willpower, more discipline, more accountability. So the traditional health coaching model is where you pay a coach to hold you accountable, right? Because the traditional health coaching model, denies, refute all the science about human behavior and instead chooses the oppressive way of dealing with human behavior, which is discipline and willpower, and etc. What is my way? My way is cognitive behavior coaching, which is a science-based approach to coaching, which number one, we start at that very high level place, which is redefine self-sabotage. Self-sabotage is a coping mechanism for feeling unsafe. You feel unsafe, you will do something else or do nothing to create safety for yourself, to prevent more harm. 2, all your action and inaction, procrastinating, perfectionism, are all neutral. They mean absolutely nothing about you as a human being. You are innately worthy, no matter how much procrastination or perfectionism you do, because you don't do it voluntarily because something is wrong with you. You do it because you feel unsafe. So actually, you're very smart when you self-sabotage. You create safety for yourself. So that's number one, redefining self-sabotage. Number 2, bring awareness to why you're behaving this way. Investigate the root cause. What can that look like? This is where I tell my student, my client, to take a pen and a paper and write down all their thoughts about the thing. So let's focus on exercise just as an example. Write down, take a blank piece of paper and a pen and write down all your thoughts about exercise. What it meant to you in the past, what your family taught you, what you recently experienced with exercise mechanism like me and yelling at CrossFit back a few years ago. What are your beliefs about exercise? And then for every thought you let your brain spilled out on a piece of paper, then right beside it, I want you to write down, where did you learn this? You don't think this way because you're a bad person. Your brain is like an open source computer. It grabs onto thoughts as you experience your life. So understanding that none of these thoughts are yours, they're society's thought, your family's thoughts, right? So write down where you've learned them, and then 2, how do they make you feel? Right? Do they make you feel excited, enthusiastic? Or do they make you feel shitty, anxious? Number one feeling, and truly, number one reason why people self-sabotage is because they feel anxious. Or on the other end of the spectrum, they feel depressed, right? Anxious, depressed, they feel ashamed. So typically when we go through the thoughts about the thing we're self-sabotaging about, we find a lot of anxious, nervous, shame, fear, depressed. Now we need to process those emotions. We need to ride the wave of our emotion, not to avoid them. And that is likely the most difficult thing that we have to do as humans, is we have to learn to be with our emotion. And the reason why we find this hard is because currently our society, everything in our society, is not welcoming of being with our emotion. Everything, like looking at my phone right now in front of me, that thing to many people is their number one coping mechanism to avoid feeling their emotion. As soon as they're an emotion they don't want to feel, they start scrolling. They start Netflixing. So we have super easy way built in our society to avoid being with our feelings. And still to this day, a vast majority of people think being quote unquote emotional is bad. So that step of processing our emotion, that's where, for the last 8 years of coaching, I have found where I spend the most time with my client. And truthfully, that's where I spent a lot of my time with my own coach, is learning to process my emotions. Then you can start asking, then you can access safety. When you process your emotion, then you can start feeling safe. Now, all these thoughts you put on paper, pull the paper back and say, like, do I want to continue to think this way? That's another big one. Many people think they just don't have a choice. I used to think this way too. I used to think like, I don't have a choice to think that being fat is a terrible thing. Until this person in front of me said, actually, you get to choose what you think. I'm like, wait, what? Whoa, whoa, back up the train here. What are you saying? I can think what I want? Yeah. I'm like, holy shit, hold on. Hold the train. I thought I didn't have a choice. So if I'm saying that to you today, you get to choose what you think. Therefore, the thoughts you think that makes you feel unsafe, that leads to self-sabotage, you can change them. That's how you change self-sabotage. By changing the way you think about the thing that you're self-sabotaging on. And in fact, this innate wisdom in your body is creating the self-sabotage to make you feel unsafe, to either get out of that situation or change the way you think about it. Simple as that. That's why self-sabotage exists, so you can course correct. Now, there's many things you can course correct about a circumstance, can get out of it, never come back to it, or you can start changing the way you think. And a great example of that is the episode I recorded 2 weeks ago about how I deal with fat phobia. I can't get out of it. I cannot get out the fat phobia as a fat woman unless I go back on a diet. And God bless me, I've tried that for 25 years. So I got to change the way that I think, because before diet culture, fat phobia, and the weight loss industry crumble, I'm probably going to be very close to my deathbed. Thinking I'm like 49. So not going to be in my generation, likely. It's the next generation, right? It's part of my mission, helping the next generation to liberate them from diet culture. So for now, I have to change my thoughts. So change the thought about the circumstance to which your self-sabotage is the way, instead of accountability and willpower, and then be patient. Right? Go through the process to learn to believe new thoughts and then take small step action. That's actually one of the tools I'm going to be teaching the student in the self-coaching mentorship. It's called minimum baseline. Minimum baseline, titration, habituation, it's all the same thing. So depending what you've learned is a way of reintegrating something that we're afraid of, that our nervous system is afraid of and reacts to, in small bites, right? So we're reintroducing small bites, and we're showing ourselves, our nervous system, our brain, that it's actually safe. That's why I say be patient, because if you've been afraid of exercising, just like me, because you've used it to lose weight, it's going to take months, if not years, for you to feel safe going to the gym again or being part of a running club. It's just going to take time, but you will get there. Just be patient, meet yourself with compassion. That's how we change self-sabotage behavior permanently for the rest of our life. If we continue to meet self-sabotage with how patriarchy and diet culture is teaching us, it's going to feel better for a bit, and then we're going to go back in not doing the thing. So if you find yourself being in cycle of on and off with a behavior towards your goal, it's because you're not meeting self-sabotage in a safe way. So grab this episode, take some notes, come and ask me question on Instagram, join one of my programs, and I'm going to teach you how to do it, because when you do it this way, you change your behavior for the rest of your life. I hope this serves you well, my sister.
Hey, my sisters, if you are loving what you are
episode.
learning on the podcast, you have to come and check out our feminist mentorship masterclasses and our internationally recognized non-diet coaching certification on our website at www.stephaniedoty.com/shop. This is where you can get the individual coaching and the support to take the concept thought on the podcast to the next level, embrace our well-being in a way that will expand our collective freedom and power. Come and join myself and other women to learn how to reshape your mind, not your body. I'll see you there.